Every single teardown I do, I get a ton of requests for various engines that you all, my viewers, would like to see me take apart on video. And unfortunately, some of those engines just aren't available in North America, or perhaps they're extremely late model or exotic, and I just haven't found a good source to get blown up engines for that type of vehicle. But when the same engines are mentioned over and over again, I try to pay attention and I make some calls, send some emails, and I see what I can find. And that is why today's teardown is on a Ford 6.8 liter V10, namely a 3-valve variant found in the 2005 to 2010 Ford Super Duty, the F-250 and larger trucks. And I've driven these trucks. They make 360 horsepower, 460 foot-pounds of torque. They run really good when they run. I mean, really good when they run. Now, this may be the very first 3-valve V10 I've had in the shop, but I am used to working on the 3-valve engines. We have a 5.4 liter V8 in our 2008 F350. It's just a shop truck with a flatbed. It's what I use to haul a lot of these core engines back here. I bought that truck pretty cheap about a decade ago with a, you guessed it, bad engine, and it's been good ever since it's been fixed, except for loud cam phasers. But we're not going to talk about that truck. We're going to talk about this core, and this is supposed to be a non-rebuildable core, and it took me just a few seconds to realize why. This particular engine has some user-installed inspection ports on both this side and the other side. This engine is fairly complete, which I like. However, there's not a ton of money in one of these engines. I can only hope that the cylinder heads make it. For those who have seen my teardown videos, you guys know the very next step in the process is to get the plugs out and see if the engine regapped them. But in this instance, pulling the plugs is kind of an ordeal. These 3-valve engines have a habit of breaking the plugs in the cylinder head, and if I were to be servicing this engine in the vehicle, I would be really concerned about it. I am not concerned about it at all, so if we break them, oh well. But I've heard a million different ways of getting these plugs out without breaking them. I've heard that you put ATF in the plug well and you let it sit for a couple days. Well, I don't have a couple days. I've also heard that if you use a 3/8-inch air impact, that does it, or electric impact does it, or half-inch drive impact, or just a breaker bar. I've heard of getting the engine to operating temperature makes it easier, of putting stuff in the cylinder. There's a million different ways I've heard of. However, we're going to try several of them. I can't get the engine warm. It's not a possibility, and I don't have time to let ATF sit in the plug wells, but I do have all of the other stuff. I have half-inch drive, I have 3/8 drive, and, well, we're going to try the 3/4 because we got nothing to lose. So let's start. Okay, the very first thing we are going to try is a regular socket, extension, and my ratchet, my 3/8 ratchet, which, let's see what happens. Ooh, that does not feel good, and it's making bad sounds. I think it's out. It's out. And, oh boy, it didn't break, kind of. The next thing we are going to try is using a 1/2 inch with a breaker bar. This is a big breaker bar, the one that you guys have seen on the channel before. And I feel like this might be overkill. It is also making some less than pleasant sounds. All right, we are 2 for 2. Next, we're going to try my chuck driver, the tool I use the most on this channel. That came right out. All right, next we're going to use my 1/2 inch drive impact because, well, we're just going to use this next. Came right out. And the last thing we're going to try is my 3/4 inch impact. Came right out. I haven't broken a single spark plug. I'm going to get this side out using my chuck driver. Hopefully I don't run into any issues. I believe all of those came out. Well, I'm not sure how that experiment worked like that, but we got all the plugs out without breaking them. That's the good news. The other good news is that they are all the same type of spark plug, and the correct plug for the engine. So we're 2 for 2. However, cylinder 1 appears to have been regapped by something in the combustion chamber. I think we're going to find out what that is. The rest of the plugs look pretty worn. They definitely haven't been replaced for a while. But cylinder 1, that's where the problem is. Or a problem, I should say. The next thing I'm going to do is pull the intake manifold. Now I don't see anything too troubling other than some fluid in the intake ports. I don't see chunks of debris. Nothing out of the norm for a core that's likely sat around for some time. The next thing we're going to do is pull the valve cover. We're going to start with the driver's side. Unlike the V8, the V10 has a balance shaft mounted to the cam, and I'm not really sure if any other engines out there use this type of balance shaft, but it looks like here's the other cam cap bolt and then the balance shaft bolts on here. This engine is pretty dirty, but it's probably what I would consider typical for one of these engines. You got to realize that a lot of these trucks are fleet vehicles, they're work trucks, they are run hard, they don't get maintained like someone's pride and joy. I mean, I'm sure some of them do, but a lot of them don't. They are workhorses and they treat them as such. So to see this bit of oil deposits in the dark varnish color is not an atypical experience. Now we'll move on to the side that had the damaged spark plug. And this side does not have a balance shaft, but one of the things I do want to check out is the cam and the followers. Uh-oh, this cam cap is loose. Someone's been in here. And that's around the cylinder that had damage, at least damage on the spark plug. One thing I like to look at when I pull a plug out of a damaged engine is I go to that cylinder and look at the valve train. I like to see if there's anything that's misplaced or broken, maybe a broken valve spring or a bent valve. I don't see anything yet. One major difference between the V8 and the V10 variant of the 3-valve is that the V8 were VVT and there's no variable valve timing on the V10, which means there's no cam phasers to fail. I think that's a really good thing. You know, just to see what happens, we're going to try to turn this over. We got to try to turn everything over. Nope, I don't know, did that move? Nope, that's going to break the bolt off in the crank. We're just going to take that out now. Before I start to pull heads, I'm actually going to pull the timing cover. I'm going to get some of the stuff off of the front of it. There's a tag on here. Apparently it runs good. Oh, this was probably from the original engine. So the original engine was from it doesn't say, 2006. I have no idea what year this engine actually is because there's tags from it looks like it's been part swapped. I can only assume it would be a guess if I put a year on this one. Let's get the water pump pulley off. That's not a hammer. Wait a minute. No. Oh, I'm so close. I'm just going to say that was excessive. All right. I bet I'll need a puller for this. Yes. So I had to kind of make this work. The threads in the crank pulley are pretty torn up, so these are just in there. But it is working. Okay, we're going to address this issue later. Now let's get some bolts out of the timing cover and see if we can get this timing cover peeled off. It looks like something made contact with this. I wonder how that happened, or maybe the engine got sat on this, but it looks like there's some rotational marks on that. Ooh, these are big. That's what she said. Okay, did I get them all? I guess we could just pull on it and find out, right? Haha. All right, let's do this the right way. Is there a right way? Apparently so. Timing cover. Pretty dirty in there as well. Let's take a look at these chains. Get some of these gaskets out of the way. Ah, got me. Well, I don't see anything too bad. I think these tensioners are oil pressure fed, which explains why I can compress that so easily. The rest of this looks pretty decent. Let's get the tensioners off, see if we can get this chain system off. Now, I must admit, I have never taken a balance shaft out of one of these. So we're just going to start taking bolts out, and it should come off. Well, that was easy. Uh-oh. These journals are pretty torn up. I do not like seeing that. Rear journal is the worst. Before this party starts getting out of hand, I'm going to go ahead and pull this crossover pipe off. I'll get the exhaust manifolds off, just kind of clean it up and get ready to pull the heads. Now at this point I could pull the head complete, but that doesn't sound like as much fun. So we're going to pull the cam caps off. I really want to check out the journals in the head. Oh yeah, I'm starting to see what happened here. Oh, it turns out I got to get the bolt all the way out. Huh, imagine that. Wow, not such a good sign. Look at the cam caps. They're really scored up. Really grooved. The head has damage. Pretty much every journal. Some worse than others. That one's pretty bad. And even some of the rollers have grooves in them. This thing appears to be oil starved. It's like a theme on this channel. Alright, now it's time to crack the head bolts loose and pull the head. Pull this head off. This should be easy. Nah, we're not going to worry about all those followers. Well, I see a few things wrong. At least these pistons aren't pointed in the wrong way, at least not that I can tell. This one seems to, the piston looks okay, but there's a lot of gravel in there. Lots of aluminum. I bet you that came from an opposing cylinder. I don't know what cylinder would oppose this one. And there's a mark right there from some more debris. Ooh, more chunks. And more chunks. We got to do our test here. All right, we're going to see if these are connecting rods or disconnecting rods. Oh, that one's connected. That one might not be connected. I think that's at the bottom of the bore. Okay. Yeah, I mean 80%, that's not bad. Also, I'd like to note the condition of this piston being so clean and the rest of them being so covered in carbon. Maybe a blown head gasket in that cylinder, cracked head. Well, I don't see any issues with the head gasket, but it's very clear that the middle cylinder is quite upset at the fact that the rod is likely broken. There's also some damage on the flat surface of this cylinder from the debris that was found in that cylinder, but I don't see any other valve damage or anything else wrong. Now we're going to crack the cam caps loose on the passenger side head. Same deal on this head. Some pretty significant grooves and scoring. Definite signs of oil starvation. Cam is the same way. Some deep grooving on the cam journals here. Time to crack the head bolts loose on the passenger head, and this is the side that had the damaged spark plug. All right, let's see what we've got. Oh boy. Well, yes. I see some problems that are a little obvious. This is one of those variable compression pistons. They tilt and let some of the compression by if it's starting to run a little lean. It's not really the case. And then we have a piston McNugget, and there's, that's a good 20% of a piston. No rings, we don't need those. That's bad. Let's do our test here. That's a connecting rod. Connecting rod. Oh, there's a disconnecting rod. Well, that was awesome. Come out of here. Ugh. That's awesome. The rings are holding this thing together. It's got a crack in the center. Again, wrist pin's nowhere to be found. I don't think we can put that one back together. And that, I don't have to say anything about that. And this combustion chamber is really banged up. I definitely don't think the problem originated in the cylinder head at this point, but it definitely caused some damage to this combustion chamber. There's part of something that's not supposed to be there embedded in that combustion chamber. And these other three look okay, but it doesn't matter. As far as I'm concerned, both of these heads will need major work to be serviceable, especially with the worn cam journals. Now, normally at this point, I would cut my losses and throw this thing in the scrap bin. But that's not really what I do on this channel, if you haven't noticed. So we're going to flip this on its tail and see what kind of carnage we find on the other side. Well, for starters, this is the oil fluid. This is the fluid that came out of this engine. It's kind of a mixture of water, oil, rust, and oil. Yes, that's what it is. But the block is really impressive. Well, I wish I had gotten the oil pan from this engine. It was probably pretty full because this engine definitely pooped out some stuff. The rear four cylinders, pretty decent. When you start getting towards the center of the engine, that's one of those adjustable rods. There's another one down there. And that one just a delete. I guess that's Ford's displacement on demand. And this cylinder, that's bad. That one's just not there. That's one of those other piston deletes. And this one actually broke the head off of one of the rod cap bolts. It's pretty impressive. If But this one's got holes on this side, and there's only one hole on the other side. The other side's got to catch up. If I have any hope of getting the crank out of this, I have to be able to turn it over. So we're going to try this first now that the heads are off. And that's not going to work. Now I do have a few other options. I think we're going to try... Option number 2 worked. Here's the front 2 cylinders. There's 1 broken bolt per rod. We're going to get these carefully broken loose so we can get what's left of these out of the engine and hopefully make this engine easier to turn over. I guess the rod's bent. I don't think I really even need to take that one off. Well, I don't think that one's coming apart. This one might, though. Maybe. Oh yes, we got the rod cap off. Bearing is pretty bad. What do we have in here? Ooh, another piston McNugget. Uh-oh. Why do I do these things? Let's get this bearing out of the way. Ah, we're moving now. Yes. Wow. That's probably going to be the coolest part of this engine. It's still good. Now we're going to skip these 2 cylinders and move to the center 2, which there's that disconnecting rod. Half of it's on the crank, half of it's there. Don't have to work too hard to get that apart, but this rod is still a semi-connecting rod. So we're going to get this 1 bolt out and see what happens. Okay. That came off pretty easy. Well, the bearings have spun. Be strong and there we are. Now in my head, this should turn over nice now. Uh-oh. What has happened? Oh, I know what happened. The rest of this cylinder is a problem. Let's just knock that out real quick. Yeah, the top part's still good. Okay, now let's try to turn this over and see how it feels. Oh yeah, nice and easy. Man, it's so beat up. Let's get the rear 4 cylinders out. And on to the last 2. Well, here's what's left. Kind of. That rod's a little bent. Rod, there's just so much missing. I guarantee it was all in the pan. That rod's bent in multiple directions. It's pretty rough. The bearings tell a story of oil starvation like we suspected when we started pulling the camshafts loose. Gotta keep oil in your vehicles, folks. Of course, you'd think we'd be done, but we still have more work to do. Let's get the oil pump off. Now let's start pulling the main caps. I'm not quite sure how these main caps come off because they have these pins here. I don't know if those pins are supposed to just like let go. I really don't know what I'm doing. I've never had one of these engines this far apart. Let's try some stuff. Oh, I think that's it. Okay, I bet you there's a tool that goes in there and pulls it up. That's a tool that I do not possess. And I'm probably not going to possess it because I don't do too many of these. Screw it. That's how I want to do it. Well, there's one. Ooh. So some of these come out pretty easy, actually. Some of them do not. We're just going to do that and hope. Seems like if you can get one out, it's pretty easy. Oh man, wait till you see these mains. Let's take a look at these main bearings. Wow, these are really chewed up. Starting to make some Reynolds bearing foil. Yeah, not good either. Journal. Gee, I wonder why it blew up. That one's pretty bad too. All right, I have no idea how heavy this crank is. This might hurt, but it's coming out. I've done worse. Oh, that's not too bad. It's not too bad at all. Here's the block. There's the user added inspection ports. I think that one's a little on the large side. I think that was a little unnecessary. You can see all the hammer marks in here. It broke through that. I don't know if that's a water jacket or not, but that could be why there was so much watery oil or oily water inside this engine. I mean, I think these things run on 520 anyway. From a business perspective, that was a terrible financial decision. I'm going to net a huge loss on this engine, and unfortunately, that's just how it goes. I know you guys felt pretty bad when I bought that bad cylinder Viper engine from a viewer of the channel. Well, as it turns out, I've sold enough parts off of that engine and the transmission that came with it where I'm actually in the green. I've made money on that deal, so I feel really good about that. I'm sure that guy always felt good about that, so don't be too mad at that guy anymore. But this engine, I am not going to recover my money. It's just not going to happen. I'll be able to sell the valve covers, and that's about it. The intake manifold probably has a bunch of metal in it. Wouldn't feel good about selling that. The cylinder heads are really rough. They're just not worth it. And the bottom end, well, we all saw how bad that bottom end looked. There wasn't much there. I think the reason this engine was in that condition is like a lot of engines on this channel. Someone ran it low on oil. Just check your oil, folks. I can't hammer that home hard enough. Every time you get gas, pull your dipstick out, spin your knob if you got a BMW, press buttons if you got something else without a dipstick. Check your oil. It's very cheap and easy to check your oil and add some as you need than it is to replace an engine. These engines are really expensive. I had to pay $600 for this totally bombed out core. A good core, a buildable engine with problems is worth $1,300 to $1,500. And if you wanted to replace this engine with a good used engine, you're spending at least $3,000, maybe much more. And I think the reason these engines are as expensive as they are is they have a lot more applications than just Super Duty trucks. They come in 5 to 10 Super Duties, but they also come in RVs and motorhomes and box trucks and buses. All kinds of stuff use this power plant, and that's why there's so much more demand than there is supply. As far as parts to sell off of this, valve covers. So if you'd like to buy valve covers off of this engine, or parts off of any of the other engines I've torn down, I'm going to leave our email in the video description, and you'll want to check out the next video I'll be releasing next week. I went crazy, bought a bunch of crazy engines. I got some Toyotas, some Mercedes, some more Fords, all kinds of stuff. Don't forget to check that out. And next Saturday, your regularly scheduled teardown will exist, I promise. And as always, I love all the feedback, all the suggestions, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.